In the land of Egypt, where the Nile River winds through the golden sands, the story of one of the most powerful queens in the history of the ancient world began. Sit-Hathor-Iunet, a name that would one day echo through the annals of Egyptian history, was born into a world of power and prestige. The air was thick with the scent of incense and the sound of temple bells as her family, descendants of noble bloodlines, stood on the brink of greatness. The exact date of Sit-Hathor-Iunet's birth is lost to the sands of time, but it is said to have occurred during the early years of the reign of Amenemhat I, the founder of the 12th dynasty. Her family, perhaps lesser known than the pharaohs themselves, were no strangers to power. They were of high birth, with ties to the royal court, and it was inevitable that Sit-Hathor-Iunet would rise to prominence. From an early age, her life was marked by the auspicious presence of the gods and the grandeur of Egypt's royal lineage. Her name, Sit-Hathor-Iunet, bore great significance. Sit meant daughter, while Hathor was the name of the goddess of love, fertility, and motherhood, revered by all Egyptians. The addition of Iunet suggested a connection to the divine and royalty, a title denoting the one who is truly exalted. Her name alone suggested that she was destined for greatness, a child of both earthly and celestial importance. As a young girl, Sit-Hathor-Iunet was not only raised in the lavish surroundings of Egypt's elite, but she was also groomed for her future role as a queen. She was educated in the arts of diplomacy, learning the subtleties of court politics and the intricacies of foreign relations. She was taught to read and write in hieroglyphs, to perform rituals, and to understand the beliefs that governed the land. Under the watchful eyes of her tutors, she learned the delicate balance of power between the throne and the gods, a knowledge that would one day make her an invaluable advisor to her husband, Amenemhat II. Her beauty and intellect were renowned even in her youth. Stories circulated through the royal court of how her presence could light up a room, her eyes bright with curiosity and her mind sharp as a dagger. Yet it was not just her outer appearance that captivated those around her. It was her wisdom and natural charisma that truly set her apart. As she grew, her name became synonymous with grace, strength, and intelligence. In the midst of the growing political tensions of the 12th dynasty, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's future took shape. The young princess caught the eye of Amenemhat II, the son of Amenemhat I, a man destined to become the next pharaoh of Egypt. Amenemhat II was a powerful and ambitious man, known for his military prowess and his diplomatic skills. However, it was clear that his path to the throne would be fraught with challenges. The political landscape was filled with intrigue, and the royal family was rife with rivalries. As the future queen's fate was tied to the throne of Egypt, she was strategically betrothed to Amenemhat II, a match that would solidify both her place in history and her husband's future rule. The union was not merely one of love, but of political necessity. Egypt, at that time, was a land divided by power struggles, and Sit-Hathor-Iunet's marriage to Amenemhat II was seen as a way to secure stability in the kingdom. As the two were wed, the pieces of Egypt's grand puzzle began to fall into place. The young queen, while still learning the ropes of her new role, quickly grasped the importance of diplomacy and influence. In Amenemhat II, she saw a man of great potential, a leader who, with her guidance, could lead Egypt to greater heights. Her relationship with Amenemhat II went beyond that of a mere political arrangement. Over time, she became not only his wife but his confidant and advisor. Together, they would navigate the challenges of ruling one of the most powerful civilizations the world had ever seen. Their union, forged in both duty and mutual respect, would prove to be one of the most influential partnerships in Egyptian history. As Sit-Hathor-Iunet matured, she became a key figure in the royal court, known not only for her beauty and intelligence but also for her strength of character. She was the daughter of the noble family who had long been tied to the pharaohs, and her upbringing was one of luxury and privilege. Yet, her parents ensured that she was well prepared for the responsibilities that lay ahead. Her education, while focusing on the arts and rituals of the Egyptian court, also included the intricacies of governance. The young queen-to-be learned how to navigate the politics of the royal court, how to understand and engage with the noble families, and how to form alliances. In ancient Egypt, the role of a queen was not merely ceremonial. The queen was a vital political force, often called upon to wield influence in matters of statecraft and diplomacy. Sit-Hathor-Iunet was well aware of the weight of her destiny. Her marriage to Amenemhat II, though politically arranged, became one of mutual respect and shared purpose. Amenemhat II, while a formidable warrior and strategist, was also a ruler deeply attuned to the challenges facing Egypt. He understood the importance of having a strong and capable queen at his side, someone who could serve as both an advisor and a guide through the complex world of diplomacy and governance. It was through Sit-Hathor-Iunet's wisdom and strength that Amenemhat II found a steady anchor to his ambitious plans. At the time of their marriage, Egypt faced a number of external and internal threats. To the south, the Nubian kingdoms were rising in power, while to the east, the Levantine regions were home to factions that could prove destabilizing to Egypt's interests. Internally, rival factions within the royal court and noble families threatened the stability of the kingdom. Amenemhat II, understanding the precarious nature of his reign, sought a partner who could help him navigate these challenges, someone who was as sharp politically as she was revered in the spiritual realm. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's background, steeped in both royal and religious traditions, made her the perfect partner for Amenemhat II. Her name, derived from the goddess Hathor, was a symbol of fertility, love, and motherhood, qualities that were highly valued in Egyptian society. But Hathor was also a goddess of power and protection, and it was this side of the goddess that Sit-Hathor-Iunet would come to embody. Her very presence was a symbol of the divine protection that Egypt needed during these turbulent times. The first few years of their marriage were marked by a growing sense of unity and strength. The young queen quickly became known for her keen intellect and her ability to influence her husband's decisions. Amenemhat II, for all his strength and determination, was wise enough to listen to her counsel. Together, they formed a partnership that not only strengthened Egypt's position in the region but also solidified their status as the ruling couple of the 12th dynasty. In the royal court, Sit-Hathor-Iunet was a figure of grace and poise, yet she commanded respect. She was not simply a passive observer but an active participant in the political machinations of the time. Her input on matters of foreign policy, military strategy, and internal governance became indispensable to her husband's rule. Amenemhat II, known for his military campaigns and his efforts to maintain Egypt's dominance in the region, relied heavily on Sit-Hathor-Iunet's advice as he formulated his strategies. Her early influence was particularly evident in the handling of Egypt's relations with Nubia. The Nubian kingdoms, historically both allies and rivals of Egypt, were growing in power during Amenemhat II's reign. Their control over the gold mines in the region posed a significant economic threat to Egypt. Amenemhat II, recognizing the strategic importance of securing these resources, began a series of military campaigns in Nubia, seeking to solidify Egypt's hold over the region. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's counsel played a critical role in these decisions. She understood the delicate balance between military action and diplomacy. While Amenemhat II focused on the military side of things, Sit-Hathor-Iunet worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure that Egypt's allies remained loyal and that Egypt's enemies were kept in check through diplomatic means. She was instrumental in forging alliances with local Nubian leaders, ensuring that Egypt's military victories were not squandered by poor political decisions. The queen's role in these campaigns was far from ceremonial. She accompanied her husband on diplomatic missions, offering advice and insight to the military commanders and local leaders they encountered. Her presence on the front lines, even if not in a physical sense, was a symbol of Egypt's strength and unity. To the people of Egypt, Sit-Hathor-Iunet was not just a queen consort. She was a protector of the kingdom, a figure who embodied both the divine and the earthly aspects of Egyptian power. Through the queen's influence, Amenemhat II's military efforts were more than just conquests. They were a means of securing Egypt's future. The queen understood that victory in battle meant little without the stability of well-formed alliances, well-managed resources, and a careful balance of power. Her ability to influence the delicate interplay between warfare, diplomacy, and governance ensured that Egypt remained a dominant force in the ancient world. As the years passed, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence within the royal court grew ever stronger. Her intelligence, grace, and diplomatic skills allowed her to secure a position of unparalleled importance in Egypt's political and military strategies. While Amenemhat II was an experienced military leader, He began to rely more and more on the wisdom of his queen, seeing in her an equal partner capable of understanding the complexities of Egypt's role in the wider world. Under the reign of Amenemhat II, Egypt faced not only external threats but also internal challenges. The nation was recovering from the turbulent reign of his predecessors, and maintaining internal stability became as crucial as military victories. The noble families of Egypt, many of whom wielded significant power, frequently vied for influence in the royal court. It was here, in the intricacies of court politics, that Sit-Hathor-Iunet's intelligence truly shone. At a time when many queens might have been sidelined in favor of their husband's public image, Sit-Hathor-Iunet was very much the architect behind the throne. She was not only a queen by title but a queen in action, using her influence to mediate between powerful factions within the court. As the queen's political acumen became evident, Amenemhat II increasingly entrusted her with the delicate task of managing the royal family's internal dynamics. Her ability to navigate these treacherous waters was due in part to her understanding of Egypt's ancient traditions and religious practices. The gods were at the center of Egyptian life, and it was through this spiritual lens that Sit-Hathor-Iunet saw many of the political struggles unfold. Her position allowed her to channel the will of the gods, using religious authority to bolster her influence. As the direct descendant of the goddess Hathor, Sit-Hathor-Iunet was seen not only as a queen but also as a divine figure whose words carried weight in both the mortal and the spiritual realms. As Amenemhat II's reign progressed, the queen's role shifted. While she had been deeply involved in military affairs, particularly with Egypt's southern neighbor Nubia, her attention now turned to more diplomatic matters. The Levant, home to a patchwork of small city-states and powerful factions, became an area of increasing interest to Egypt. Control over trade routes and resources in the Levant was vital to Egypt's prosperity, and the queen understood the importance of securing alliances in this region. Sit-Hathor-Iunet, ever the diplomat, was instrumental in securing Egypt's position in the Levant. She was known to have fostered relationships with influential leaders in the region, negotiating peace treaties and ensuring that Egypt's interests were protected. Her diplomatic strategy was one of balance and subtlety. While her husband focused on the military aspect, Sit-Hathor-Iunet worked behind the scenes, leveraging her charm, wisdom, and divine status to create alliances that would serve Egypt's long-term interests. One of her most significant achievements was the securing of Egypt's dominance in trade with the Phoenicians, whose expertise in shipbuilding and navigation made them valuable allies. Through careful negotiations, Sit-Hathor-Iunet helped solidify a treaty with the Phoenician leaders, ensuring Egypt's access to crucial trade goods such as timber and precious metals. This move not only strengthened Egypt's economy but also established Egypt as a powerful presence in the Mediterranean trade networks. The queen's influence was not limited to foreign affairs alone. Sit-Hathor-Iunet also played a crucial role in securing the royal succession. As Amenemhat II's wife, she was the mother of his children, and her ability to ensure the survival of her heirs was of paramount importance to the stability of Egypt. With the throne often vulnerable to challenges from within the royal family, the queen used her influence to ensure that her son, Amenemhat III, was well prepared to eventually take the throne. Through careful planning and strategic maneuvering, Sit-Hathor-Iunet ensured that her son was educated in the ways of leadership, diplomacy, and governance. She knew that the future of Egypt depended on the continuity of the dynasty, and her role in guiding her son toward power was vital. While Amenemhat II remained the ruling pharaoh, it was clear that the queen's legacy would live on through her son. As Amenemhat II's reign continued, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's power and influence became increasingly apparent. Her presence was felt not only in the royal court but also in the everyday lives of the Egyptian people. She was a figure of worship, a queen who embodied the divine protection of the gods, and a ruler who understood the delicate balance between power and diplomacy. Her name became synonymous with stability and strength. Her image adorned temples and monuments, where she was depicted alongside her husband Amenemhat II as a symbol of divine partnership. The queen was not just a wife or mother, she was a key player in the shaping of Egypt's destiny. A woman whose influence transcended the bounds of traditional queenship. As Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence grew stronger, her role in Egypt's political sphere became even more pronounced. Though Amenemhat II was an ambitious and powerful ruler, it was increasingly clear that his success was not solely his own. The partnership between him and his queen was one of mutual respect, each supporting the other in a way that made their reign one of the most effective in the history of Egypt's new kingdom. Together, they represented the epitome of balance between military might and political diplomacy. The queen's relationship with her husband was one built on trust, shared vision, and, above all, strategy. Amenemhat II was a warrior at heart. His military campaigns against Nubia, his expanding influence in the Levant, and his attempts to solidify Egypt's borders showcased his strength. However, it was Sit-Hathor-Iunet who proved to be his most trusted advisor when it came to navigating the complexities of alliances, negotiations, and royal court politics. Though much of her life remained behind the scenes, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's wisdom and guidance were felt across the land, from advising on military campaigns to protecting Egypt's economic interests. She was at the very heart of her husband's rule. But more importantly, she was the silent force that allowed Amenemhat II to focus on his military endeavors while she ensured the political and diplomatic landscape remained secure. The royal court was not the only place where her influence was felt. The common people, too, looked to her for guidance and inspiration. As a queen, Sit-Hathor-Iunet was more than just a ceremonial figure. She was a living symbol of Egypt's divine favor, a queen whose connection to the gods elevated her in the eyes of the people. Her role in rituals, her participation in the state-sponsored religious activities, and her presence at major temple ceremonies were vital to maintaining the legitimacy of the throne. In every corner of Egypt, her influence was palpable as she was deeply involved in every aspect of Egyptian society, from the highest courts to the lives of ordinary citizens. But despite her growing power and influence, Sit-Hathor-Iunet never allowed herself to become complacent. She knew the dangers that came with the throne, both from external forces and within the royal family itself. To protect Egypt's future, she worked tirelessly behind the scenes, constantly ensuring that alliances were solidified, that potential threats were neutralized, and that her son, Amenemhat III, was prepared to one day ascend the throne. The queen's careful balancing act between maintaining her power and safeguarding the future of her family ensured that Egypt's leadership remained strong. Her work was not just about securing her own legacy, it was about creating a stable future for the next generation of Egyptian rulers. When she looked at her son, she saw not only a future pharaoh but a reflection of her own political acumen and vision. Amenemhat II's reign flourished under Sit-Hathor-Iunet's guidance, and Egypt, as a result, was more united and prosperous than ever before. But as time passed and Amenemhat II's military campaigns came to a close, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence began to turn inward. Her role as a mother and protector of Egypt's future would take center stage as she shifted her focus towards securing her son's path to the throne. The queen's legacy was already beginning to take shape. Her partnership with Amenemhat II had solidified Egypt's dominance in the region, and through her careful political maneuvering, the queen had ensured that Egypt was well-positioned to thrive for generations to come. But her true legacy would be her role in ensuring the continuity of Egypt's royal bloodline. As the final years of Amenemhat II's reign approached, Sit-Hathor-Iunet looked toward the future with a sense of both pride and determination. The next chapter in her life, one focused on securing her son's place as Egypt's ruler, would be just as important as the one that had brought her to power. She knew that the future of Egypt rested not only on the strength of her husband's rule but also on the political acumen and leadership of her son. And so, as the queen continued her role in guiding Egypt through these delicate times, she stood as a testament to the strength, wisdom, and legacy of women in ancient Egypt. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's name would not only live on in history as the wife of Amenemhat II but also as one of Egypt's most influential queens and architect of the kingdom's political future. A divine figure who would shape the destiny of Egypt for years to come. The union between Sit-Hathor-Iunet and Amenemhat II was more than just a marriage, it was a pivotal alliance that shaped the future of Egypt. Though born into the lap of royal privilege, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's marriage to Amenemhat II symbolized the intertwining of power, destiny, and divine favor. It marked the beginning of a partnership that would not only stabilize the kingdom but also influence the course of history in ancient Egypt. In the court of Egypt, marriage was rarely a simple union of love. It was a political arrangement designed to solidify power and secure the succession of the throne. Sit-Hathor-Iunet, the daughter of noble blood, was chosen not only for her beauty and grace but also for her strategic importance. Her name, which invoked the goddess Hathor, symbolized fertility, power, and protection, qualities that were seen as vital for the success of the reign of Amenemhat II. But more than this, she was an astute and capable individual whose wisdom and diplomatic skills would soon become a cornerstone of her husband's rule. At the time of their marriage, Amenemhat II was poised to ascend to the throne. His father, Amenemhat I, had successfully founded the 12th dynasty, but the stability of Egypt was far from secure. The kingdom was rife with internal strife and external threats. Amenemhat II, though a seasoned warrior, understood that he could not face these challenges alone. He needed a partner who could match his ambition, share his vision for Egypt, and navigate the complexities of the royal court. In Sit-Hathor-Iunet, he found not only a wife but a trusted confidant and advisor. Their marriage was one forged in both love and duty. Though many political marriages were characterized by power struggles and manipulation, the bond between Sit-Hathor-Iunet and Amenemhat II transcended these typical dynamics. Their union was based on a shared understanding of Egypt's challenges and the necessity of their roles in ensuring the kingdom's survival. Each brought complementary strengths to the table. Amenemhat II, a formidable military leader, and Sit-Hathor-Iunet, a wise and diplomatic queen who understood the art of governance. From the very beginning of their marriage, Sit-Hathor-Iunet proved to be a steadying influence on her husband. She was not just a queen by title but an active participant in the governance of Egypt. Her involvement was far-reaching. She advised Amenemhat II on matters of state, diplomacy, and military affairs, offering insights and strategies that were as invaluable as the riches of Egypt itself. While Amenemhat II led his armies into battle, it was Sit-Hathor-Iunet who helped manage the delicate alliances with neighboring powers, ensuring that Egypt's political landscape remained secure. One of the most pressing challenges during the early years of their marriage was the growing threat from the southern region of Nubia. The Nubian kingdoms were powerful and wealthy, controlling the gold mines that were crucial to Egypt's economy. Egypt's influence in Nubia had always been a delicate matter. Though Egypt had long been the dominant power in the region, the balance of power was shifting as the Nubian kings grew in strength. Amenemhat II knew that the stability of his kingdom depended on securing these vital resources, but he also understood that military conquest alone would not suffice. He needed a queen who could help him navigate the delicate negotiations with Nubia's rulers. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's role in these negotiations was critical. As a queen of both royal and divine heritage, she carried a unique authority that extended beyond the mere political realm. Her connection to the goddess Hathor was not just symbolic, it gave her a kind of divine legitimacy that was recognized by other kingdoms. In her, the Nubian leaders saw not just a queen but a figure of divine protection and wisdom. Her diplomatic skills, her ability to mediate and negotiate, were essential in securing a peaceful settlement with the Nubian kingdoms. Through a series of diplomatic missions, Sit-Hathor-Iunet successfully forged alliances with key Nubian leaders. Her approach was one of diplomacy over force, seeking to avoid unnecessary bloodshed while still securing Egypt's interests. Her ability to bring peace to the region not only solidified her status as a powerful queen but also strengthened Amenemhat II's reign, allowing him to focus on consolidating power within Egypt and preparing for future military campaigns. The success of their marriage went beyond political alliances and military victories. Sit-Hathor-Iunet was also a nurturing figure in the royal court. She was not just a queen consort but a mother and protector of Egypt's future. As the mother of Amenemhat III, she played an integral role in shaping her son's education and preparing him for his future role as pharaoh. Her vision for Egypt was not confined to her own reign, she saw beyond her lifetime, ensuring that the dynasty would continue to thrive for generations to come. As Amenemhat II focused on external threats, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's role as a stabilizing force within the royal family became increasingly important. She managed the complexities of court politics, often acting as a mediator between rival factions and ensuring that the royal family remained united. Her influence was felt not only in the royal court but throughout Egypt. As she became a symbol of divine wisdom and strength, Amenemhat II, for his part, came to rely more and more on his queen's counsel. Though he was a strong and capable ruler, he recognized the value of Sit-Hathor-Iunet's perspective. Their partnership, built on mutual respect and trust, allowed them to navigate the challenges of ruling one of the most powerful civilizations of the ancient world. Together, they forged a reign that would leave an indelible mark on Egypt's history. Their bond, though rooted in political necessity, blossomed into one of the most successful and influential partnerships in Egyptian history. The reign of Amenemhat II was marked by military victories, political stability, and economic prosperity, all of which were made possible in large part by the wisdom and influence of his queen. The union between Sit-Hathor-Iunet and Amenemhat II had proven to be a powerful one. While Amenemhat II had inherited the throne and military strength from his father, Sit-Hathor-Iunet had become the guiding force behind his reign. As Egypt faced numerous internal and external challenges, the queen's wisdom and insight were indispensable to her husband's success. Together, they formed a partnership that allowed Egypt not only to survive but to thrive during Amenemhat II's reign. Amenemhat II, though capable and skilled as a military leader, quickly realized that his ambitions for Egypt would require more than just military might. He needed to secure alliances, navigate the delicate political currents within his court, and manage the diverse regions of Egypt's vast territory. It was here that Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence came into play. Her political savvy and deep understanding of Egypt's internal dynamics provided her husband with the guidance he needed to rule effectively. From the early days of their marriage, Sit-Hathor-Iunet established herself as not only a supportive queen but an active participant in governance. While Amenemhat II was focused on expanding Egypt's borders and defending against external threats, the queen took on the crucial role of overseeing the stability within Egypt's borders. She understood that to maintain the pharaoh's power, Egypt's internal structures, political, economic, and social, needed to remain strong and united. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's most significant contributions lay in her ability to manage the complexities of Egypt's royal court. The 12th dynasty was marked by political intrigue and power struggles between noble families, all vying for influence and control. Yet, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's presence at court was a stabilizing force. She worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure that rival factions did not destabilize the kingdom. Her calm demeanor, paired with her ability to mediate disputes, earned her the respect of those around her. She was the peacemaker who ensured the unity of the royal family and the support of the noble houses. Her influence extended beyond the palace and court as well. Sit-Hathor-Iunet had a deep understanding of Egypt's military and economic needs, which allowed her to be an invaluable advisor to her husband. She recognized the importance of securing Egypt's economy, especially in times of war, and took steps to safeguard Egypt's resources. One of her early initiatives was to oversee the management of Egypt's vast agricultural lands. With Egypt's economy heavily reliant on the fertile lands of the Nile, the queen ensured that agricultural production remained high and stable even during times of military conflict. At the same time, Sit-Hathor-Iunet also took a hands-on role in ensuring the welfare of Egypt's people. As queen, she was responsible for the welfare of the masses, and she used her influence to create policies that helped protect the common people. She supported building projects that created jobs and helped improve infrastructure, including the construction of irrigation systems to ensure that Egypt's agricultural heartland remained productive. This focus on the welfare of the people, combined with her political and economic foresight, solidified her position as a trusted advisor to Amenemhat II. Beyond governance, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's role as the Queen of Egypt was also deeply tied to religion. In Egypt, the pharaoh was seen as a divine figure, and the queen's role in the spiritual life of the nation was of immense importance. As the daughter of Hathor, the goddess of love, beauty, and motherhood, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's connection to the divine was unquestioned. She was a living embodiment of Hathor's blessings, and her presence at religious ceremonies reinforced her status as a divine figure. The queen's influence over Egypt's religious life was not merely symbolic. She actively participated in religious rituals and ceremonies that honored the gods and cemented Egypt's divine connection. Her role in the religious sphere also reinforced her political influence. By aligning herself with the gods and presenting herself as a divine figure, Sit-Hathor-Iunet solidified her power as a queen, ensuring that her decisions were seen as divinely sanctioned by the people of Egypt. One of the most significant ways in which Sit-Hathor-Iunet shaped Amenemhat II's leadership was through her counsel on military matters. While Amenemhat II was a fierce warrior, the queen understood that the most successful campaigns were those that were well-planned, not just fought. She often worked with military leaders to devise strategies that minimized bloodshed and maximized the long-term benefits for Egypt. Her diplomatic skills were equally as important as her husband's military prowess. Together, they formed a balanced and effective partnership that allowed Egypt to maintain both military dominance and diplomatic stability. During one of Amenemhat II's military campaigns in Nubia, Sit-Hathor-Iunet played a crucial role in managing Egypt's relations with the Nubian kingdoms. Nubia, a powerful region rich in gold and resources, was vital to Egypt's economy. The military conflict in Nubia was not only about securing gold, but also about maintaining Egypt's status as the dominant power in the region. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's diplomatic influence ensured that the Nubian leaders were kept at bay while the military campaign proceeded, preventing any destabilizing alliances between Nubia and Egypt's other enemies. As Amenemhat II continued his military efforts, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's role as a mediator between Egypt and neighboring kingdoms grew. She became a trusted intermediary who helped ensure that Egypt's military victories were followed by peace treaties and diplomatic agreements. Her ability to secure lasting peace allowed Amenemhat II to focus on strengthening Egypt's military and political power without worrying about external threats destabilizing his reign. But Sit-Hathor-Iunet's role as the guiding force behind Amenemhat II's leadership was not limited to external affairs. She was also instrumental in shaping the future of Egypt by preparing her son, Amenemhat III, for his eventual role as pharaoh. The queen understood that her legacy would live on through her children, and she took great care in ensuring that her son was well educated in the art of governance. She worked closely with him, teaching him the importance of diplomacy, leadership, and maintaining Egypt's power. It was through her careful guidance that Amenemhat III would later become one of Egypt's most respected and successful pharaohs. By the time Amenemhat II's reign was nearing its zenith, Sit-Hathor-Iunet had solidified her role as both a political and spiritual leader. Her influence was felt throughout the kingdom, from the royal court to the temples, from the military to the marketplaces. Together, she and Amenemhat II had built a reign that was marked by both military victories and political stability, laying the foundation for Egypt's prosperity for generations to come. The reign of Amenemhat II was one of both military conquest and political diplomacy, and at the heart of these efforts stood his queen, Sit-Hathor-Iunet. While Amenemhat II led his armies with unmatched bravery, it was Sit-Hathor-Iunet's wisdom, diplomatic acumen, and divine influence that allowed his campaigns to unfold with both strategic brilliance and political finesse. Their union was not only one of love but also of shared purpose, with the queen serving as a vital partner in the defense and expansion of Egypt. In the ancient world, military campaigns were not just about the physical battle on the front lines. They were intricately tied to diplomacy, alliances, and managing the aftermath of conquest. Amenemhat II, as a ruler who understood the delicate balance between power and diplomacy, could not have succeeded in his campaigns without the counsel and guidance of his queen. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's role in these military endeavors was profound, especially in Egypt's southern neighbor, Nubia. Nubia, a region of power and wealth. Nubia, rich in resources such as gold, timber, and other precious commodities, was vital to Egypt's economy. Throughout history, Egypt had frequently engaged with Nubia, and their relationship was one of both cooperation and conflict. By Amenemhat II's reign, Nubia had grown in power and influence, and controlling this region was of the utmost importance to Egypt's continued prosperity. The Nubian kings controlled vast gold mines that were crucial to Egypt's wealth, and thus, ensuring Egypt's dominance in Nubia was one of Amenemhat II's most pressing objectives. However, Amenemhat II knew that to succeed in Nubia, he could not rely solely on military strength. The region was home to powerful leaders, many of whom had resisted Egypt's authority in the past. Conquering Nubia would require more than just brute force. It would require tact, diplomacy, and the establishment of long-lasting alliances. It was in this delicate arena where Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence was most felt. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's role in the Nubian campaign. While Amenemhat II led the military campaign in Nubia, Sit-Hathor-Iunet played a crucial role in ensuring that Egypt's dominance was not only achieved through military conquest but also through diplomacy. Her unique position as both a queen and a figure imbued with divine protection allowed her to wield influence that few others in the ancient world could claim. Sit-Hathor-Iunet was known for her ability to broker peace in the wake of military conflict, while her husband secured Egypt's military victories. It was the queen who ensured that these victories were followed by treaties, alliances, and stable relations. Her efforts in Nubia were no different. After Amenemhat II's victories on the battlefield, Sit-Hathor-Iunet worked tirelessly to ensure that the Nubian leaders were not alienated but instead brought into Egypt's fold through diplomatic negotiations. One of her most significant achievements in Nubia was the negotiation of a peace treaty with the Nubian kings that allowed Egypt to maintain its influence over the region without the need for constant military intervention. Sit-Hathor-Iunet, through her keen understanding of the Nubian rulers' desires and motivations, brokered a deal that secured Egypt's access to the precious gold mines while ensuring the Nubian leaders retained some degree of autonomy. This treaty allowed Egypt to focus on other areas of expansion without being distracted by a prolonged war in the south. The Levant, Egypt's expanding influence. While Nubia represented a crucial region for Egypt's military and economic security, the Levant, an area to the northeast of Egypt, was equally important. The Levant was home to several city-states and kingdoms, each vying for power and influence. For Egypt, securing alliances with these regions was critical for maintaining trade routes and ensuring the stability of the empire. However, the Levant was also home to potential threats, including the growing power of the Hittites and other rival kingdoms. In the Levant, Amenemhat II's military campaigns were marked by a series of skirmishes and battles. Yet again, it was Sit-Hathor-Iunet who proved instrumental in ensuring that Egypt's victories in the Levant were not marred by instability. After Amenemhat II's victories on the battlefield, the queen once again stepped forward, offering her diplomatic expertise to secure peace and build alliances with the local kingdoms. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's ability to broker peace in the Levant was unparalleled. She understood the importance of maintaining Egypt's trade routes and ensuring that the region remained politically stable. Through a series of diplomatic negotiations, she was able to forge strong alliances with key Levantine rulers. Her ability to understand the motivations of these leaders and offer them terms that were mutually beneficial helped ensure that Egypt's influence in the region remained secure. Balancing war and peace. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's role in Amenemhat II's military campaigns was one of balance. While her husband led with the sword, she led with the pen and the spoken word, using her influence to turn military victories into long-term peace and prosperity. Her diplomatic efforts ensured that Egypt's military conquests were not short-lived but laid the foundation for Egypt's enduring strength in the region. Through her guidance, Amenemhat II's military campaigns were not simply about expanding Egypt's borders but also about securing lasting peace. Her strategic foresight allowed Egypt to maintain a powerful military presence without being bogged down by constant warfare. Sit-Hathor-Iunet understood that true power came not just from defeating one's enemies but from turning those victories into lasting stability. Her diplomatic skills were also crucial in ensuring Egypt's relationships with its allies remained strong. By carefully managing Egypt's alliances, Sit-Hathor-Iunet ensured that Egypt could rely on the support of its allies when needed. Her reputation as a wise and just queen was known far and wide, and many rulers came to her seeking counsel and guidance. Her ability to mediate conflicts and foster strong alliances was key to ensuring Egypt's continued dominance in the ancient world. A legacy of war and peace. By the end of Amenemhat II's reign, Egypt had emerged as a dominant force in both the military and diplomatic spheres. While Amenemhat II's military campaigns had secured Egypt's borders and expanded its influence, it was Sit-Hathor-Iunet's diplomatic efforts that ensured Egypt's long-term stability. Her ability to balance the demands of war and peace, to negotiate with enemies and allies alike, solidified her legacy as one of Egypt's most influential queens. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's role in Egypt's military affairs was not just about diplomacy. It was about securing Egypt's future. Her efforts ensured that Amenemhat II's reign was marked not just by military conquest but by lasting peace and prosperity. In many ways, her diplomatic genius was as essential to Egypt's success as the strength of Amenemhat II's armies. Her legacy, therefore, was one of balance between war and peace, between military strength and diplomatic skill, and between the duties of a queen and the broader needs of the kingdom. As Egypt flourished, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence continued to be felt, her wisdom and strength standing as pillars of her husband's reign. Sit-Hathor-Iunet, the queen who had proven herself as a sharp diplomat, a wise advisor, and a protector of Egypt's prosperity, now turned her gaze inward, toward her son, Amenemhat III. He was young, but his future was already being carefully shaped by the queen's guidance. The future of Egypt, after all, was tied to the stability of its royal bloodline, and Sit-Hathor-Iunet knew that the transition of power from Amenemhat II to her son was not to be taken lightly. While Amenemhat II was focused on securing Egypt's borders and maintaining its supremacy through military campaigns and political alliances, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's thoughts increasingly centered on preparing her son for his own eventual reign. Amenemhat III, though still a child, was the heir to the throne, and the queen had begun laying the groundwork for his future leadership. The education of the young prince was paramount in her mind, for she understood that the strength of the kingdom would one day rest on his shoulders. As a mother, Sit-Hathor-Iunet was fiercely protective of her son. She knew that the court of Egypt, with its intrigues and rivalries, was a dangerous place, particularly for a young prince. The queen's careful management of court politics ensured that Amenemhat III was surrounded by loyal allies who would guide him and protect him. She was determined to raise a ruler who was not only capable of leading Egypt but who would continue the dynasty's legacy of military power, economic prosperity, and diplomatic finesse. But her guidance went beyond the classroom or the protection of his physical safety. Sit-Hathor-Iunet understood the importance of molding Amenemhat III into a king who would command respect and loyalty. Her influence on his character was subtle but profound. As a mother, she instilled in him a deep sense of duty to Egypt and its people, a commitment to ensuring that the kingdom remained strong, prosperous, and united. The queen took an active role in her son's education. While Amenemhat II was busy with his military campaigns, Sit-Hathor-Iunet personally oversaw the training and instruction of her son. She ensured that Amenemhat III was taught the skills of governance, diplomacy, and military strategy. The queen's own wisdom, gained through years of navigating the complexities of royal court life, became the foundation upon which her son's future reign was built. She taught him not only the intricacies of managing Egypt's vast territories, but also the art of maintaining alliances with other powerful kingdoms, ensuring that Egypt would continue to thrive under his rule. In addition to his formal education, Sit-Hathor-Iunet ensured that Amenemhat III was exposed to the royal rituals and religious ceremonies that were an essential part of Egyptian leadership. The pharaoh was not just a ruler in the political sense but was also the living embodiment of the gods on earth. The queen made sure that her son understood the importance of his divine role and the need to maintain harmony between the spiritual and earthly realms. She believed that a successful ruler was one who could maintain both political power and spiritual favor, and she taught Amenemhat III to approach governance with a deep sense of reverence for the gods and the sacred traditions of Egypt. Her teachings went beyond the practical matters of ruling. Sit-Hathor-Iunet also instilled in Amenemhat III the values of wisdom, patience, and fairness. She encouraged him to understand that leadership was not about force or domination but about guiding the people with kindness and ensuring their well-being. These lessons, taught in the quiet chambers of the royal palace, would remain with Amenemhat III for the rest of his life, shaping the ruler he would become. While Amenemhat II was the active pharaoh, Amenemhat III was being prepared to take the throne in a world that would require a different kind of leadership. The challenges that lay ahead for Egypt were not just military in nature but political and economic as well. Egypt's dominance in the region was being challenged by rising powers, and Sit-Hathor-Iunet knew that her son would need to be a ruler who could not only defend Egypt's borders but also guide the kingdom through a changing political landscape. As a mother, Sit-Hathor-Iunet also had to navigate the complexities of ensuring that Amenemhat III was prepared for the challenges of ruling in a way that was not overly burdensome. She knew that power was a heavy weight to bear, especially for a young prince, and she made sure to temper his education with moments of respite, allowing him to grow into his future role at a pace that felt natural. This balance between the pressures of royal life and the personal development of the young prince became a defining feature of Sit-Hathor-Iunet's guidance. Her efforts to protect her son extended beyond the palace walls. She ensured that Amenemhat III's safety was always a priority, especially during the volatile moments of Amenemhat II's reign. As the kingdom's enemies watched from the borders, Sit-Hathor-Iunet was always mindful of the dangers posed by rival factions within Egypt as well as the threats from outside forces. She worked tirelessly to prevent any challenges to her son's future reign and to maintain the stability of Egypt's leadership. While Sit-Hathor-Iunet had never sought the throne for herself, her role in shaping her son's future reign was in many ways just as powerful as that of any ruler. Through her wisdom, her guidance, and her unwavering commitment to Egypt's future, she became one of the most important figures in the history of the 12th dynasty. Her legacy was not just in the strength of her political alliances or the success of her husband's reign, but in the preparation of the next generation of Egypt's rulers. Amenemhat III would later become one of Egypt's most respected pharaohs, known for his ability to maintain the kingdom's power and prosperity during a time of great change. Much of his success can be attributed to the lessons taught to him by his mother, Sit-Hathor-Iunet. The queen's influence, though often behind the scenes, left an indelible mark on the future of Egypt, ensuring that the legacy of her family would continue for generations. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's nurturing role extended well beyond the walls of the royal palace. Her personal influence on Amenemhat III's early development went hand in hand with the careful orchestration of Egypt's future leadership. As the mother of the future pharaoh, she understood that the decisions she made in her son's education and upbringing would ripple through Egypt's history, shaping the kingdom's destiny. Her ability to foster a strong sense of identity in Amenemhat III was crucial. She made sure he understood not only the practical aspects of ruling but also the symbolic weight that came with being pharaoh. The throne of Egypt was not simply a political position. It was a sacred duty. Sit-Hathor-Iunet taught her son to see himself as the protector of Egypt, the intermediary between the gods and the people. This divine role was a cornerstone of the pharaoh's power, and it was through this lens that Amenemhat III began to see his own destiny. Under her tutelage, Amenemhat III came to understand the importance of not just military might or diplomatic skills, but of spiritual leadership. The queen helped him cultivate a strong connection to the gods and the spiritual realm that would serve him well throughout his reign. She taught him the sacred rituals that were integral to maintaining Egypt's divine order, instructing him in how to approach the gods with humility and respect. In doing so, Sit-Hathor-Iunet ensured that her son was not just equipped with the knowledge of governance, but also with the wisdom to rule in harmony with Egypt's ancient traditions. At the same time, Sit-Hathor-Iunet knew that Amenemhat III's reign would be different from that of his father, Amenemhat II. The political landscape was shifting, and Egypt was facing challenges both from within and outside its borders. The influence of neighboring empires was growing, and Egypt could no longer rely solely on its military might to secure its future. Sit-Hathor-Iunet had seen the value of diplomacy during her own reign as queen, and she was determined to pass this wisdom on to her son. It was during these formative years that Amenemhat III began to understand the art of diplomacy, something that his mother had mastered. The queen's role in Egypt's political affairs had never been passive. She had shaped alliances, negotiated peace treaties, and steered Egypt away from potential conflicts. These lessons were central to the education of Amenemhat III. While military campaigns were still important, Sit-Hathor-Iunet impressed upon her son the importance of building relationships with other kingdoms, ensuring Egypt's prosperity through peace as much as through war. At the royal court, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence was also felt in the way she helped maintain the unity of Egypt's aristocracy. The royal family, though united by blood, was often divided by ambition and rivalry. The court was rife with factions, each seeking to gain influence and power. Sit-Hathor-Iunet was an expert in managing these rivalries, ensuring that her son's future reign would not be threatened by the internal power struggles that had plagued other royal families. She made sure that Amenemhat III understood the importance of loyalty and trust, qualities that were vital to a ruler's success. Despite her strong influence in court politics, Sit-Hathor-Iunet also knew that her son needed to forge his own path. She allowed him the space to develop his own leadership style, offering guidance without overstepping. She encouraged him to build his own relationships with the nobles, military commanders, and priests, so that when the time came for him to ascend the throne, he would do so with the respect and support of Egypt's key figures. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's role as a mother was to prepare Amenemhat III to step into his role as king. But her guidance was not to make him a mere reflection of herself or his father. She wanted him to be a ruler who would leave his own mark on Egypt. The bond between mother and son grew stronger as Amenemhat III matured. Sit-Hathor-Iunet was not just a teacher. She was a constant source of support and strength. Her wisdom was a guiding light in moments of uncertainty, and her love for her son was unwavering. She was not only his mother but his most trusted advisor, someone he could turn to for counsel when facing difficult decisions. Her presence was a steadying force, providing him with the confidence he needed to step into the role of pharaoh. As Amenemhat III approached the age when he would be ready to take the throne, Sit-Hathor-Iunet began to prepare him for the demands of kingship. She took him with her on diplomatic missions, introducing him to the art of negotiation and the delicate balance of maintaining peace with Egypt's neighbors. She showed him how to make decisions that would benefit Egypt's future, not just its present. Sit-Hathor-Iunet knew that the challenges ahead would be formidable, but she had every confidence that her son was ready to face them. Her influence on Amenemhat III's reign was not limited to the political realm. As a mother, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's love and devotion helped shape his character, guiding him to become the compassionate and wise ruler he would be. She taught him the importance of empathy, of listening to the needs of the people, and of ensuring that Egypt's prosperity was shared by all its citizens. Her lessons went beyond the corridors of power. They were lessons in humanity, in leadership that served not only the elite but the common people as well. When the time came for Amenemhat III to ascend to the throne, Sit-Hathor-Iunet stepped back, knowing that her son was ready to rule. Though she would no longer be the visible figure at the court, her influence would never fade. Her legacy was embedded in his every decision, every policy, and every act of leadership. Sit-Hathor-Iunet had laid the foundation for Amenemhat III's reign, and the future of Egypt was secure in his capable hands. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence on Egypt was not confined to the political and military realms. As queen, she held a profound and crucial role in the spiritual life of the kingdom. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh was not only the ruler of the land but also the divine intermediary between the gods and the people. The queen, too, was not merely a consort but a key figure in maintaining the cosmic order, ensuring the gods' favor, and guiding Egypt's spiritual path. It was in this sacred domain that Sit-Hathor-Iunet's divine connection through her name, which invoked the goddess Hathor, became an essential aspect of her power. Hathor, the goddess of love, motherhood, and fertility, was one of the most important deities in the Egyptian pantheon. As the daughter of Hathor, Sit-Hathor-Iunet was seen as the living embodiment of the goddess's virtues, and her role in religious ceremonies reflected this divine association. She was not just a queen. She was a spiritual figure whose presence in the temples and its sacred rituals helped maintain the balance between the human and divine worlds. Her influence in religious matters was integral to the legitimacy of Amenemhat II's reign and to the stability of the 12th dynasty. In ancient Egypt, religion and politics were intertwined in such a way that one could not exist without the other. The king's rule was only legitimate if it was believed to be sanctioned by the gods. This divine right was bolstered by the queen's role, for she, too, was seen as divinely chosen. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's participation in religious rituals and ceremonies was not merely ceremonial. It was an active role in ensuring that Egypt remained in the gods' favor. The queen's involvement in religious practices helped legitimize Amenemhat II's reign, providing both political and spiritual stability to the kingdom. While Amenemhat II focused on consolidating power through military and diplomatic means, Sit-Hathor-Iunet turned her attention to the spiritual health of Egypt. She understood that the welfare of the nation was not solely dependent on material resources or military victories but also on maintaining the gods' favor. The queen made sure that the gods, especially Hathor, remained central to the daily lives of the Egyptian people. She was a patroness of the temple, and her role in overseeing religious ceremonies allowed her to influence not only the royal court but also the broader population. One of Sit-Hathor-Iunet's most important contributions was her involvement in the construction and restoration of temples dedicated to the gods. She was a benefactor to the priesthood and worked to ensure that religious practices were carried out according to the ancient traditions. The queen personally oversaw the construction of several temples which served as centers of worship and learning. These temples were not only places of spiritual significance, but also symbols of the queen's power and her connection to the divine. The queen's role in religious life extended beyond her physical presence in the temples. She worked closely with the high priests, ensuring that religious ceremonies were conducted in a way that honored the gods and strengthened Egypt's spiritual foundation. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence over the priesthood was considerable. As a figure who was seen as both divine and human, she held a unique position in Egypt's spiritual hierarchy. The high priests, who were among the most powerful figures in Egyptian society, recognized her divine connection and often sought her counsel on matters of religious importance. Her influence also extended to the annual rituals that were held to honor the gods and ensure Egypt's prosperity. One of the most important rituals was the Festival of Hathor, which celebrated the goddess of love and fertility. This festival was marked by elaborate ceremonies, including music, dance, and offerings to Hathor, and it played a key role in reaffirming Egypt's connection to the divine. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's presence at the festival was essential, for she was the earthly representative of Hathor, and her participation helped ensure the continued favor of the gods. The queen's participation in these festivals went beyond symbolism. She understood that these rituals were vital to the cohesion of Egyptian society. The people looked to the queen not only for political leadership but also for spiritual guidance. In times of uncertainty or crisis, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's role as the representative of Hathor provided a sense of stability and hope. Her spiritual influence was as important as her political power, for it was through the queen's connection to the gods that the people of Egypt found assurance that their land would continue to thrive. In addition to her role as a religious leader, Sit-Hathor-Iunet also served as a protector of Egypt's cultural heritage. The temples and rituals she supported were not just religious institutions. They were also centers of learning and culture. The scribes, priests, and scholars who worked in the temples were responsible for preserving Egypt's ancient traditions, including its art, literature, and scientific knowledge. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's patronage of these institutions helped ensure that Egypt's cultural heritage was passed down to future generations. Under her guidance, the temples became not only places of worship, but also centers of intellectual and artistic achievement. Her influence in the realm of religion was also felt in the court of Amenemhat II. While the king was the political and military leader of Egypt, the queen was the spiritual anchor that kept the kingdom grounded in its religious traditions. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's role in religious matters was vital to the legitimacy of the royal family. As the mother of Amenemhat III, she also ensured that her son understood the importance of maintaining Egypt's spiritual traditions. Through her teachings, Amenemhat III was instilled with the knowledge that the pharaoh's rule was divinely ordained, and that his connection to the gods was a fundamental aspect of his power. The queen's spiritual influence was not confined to her court or her son alone. She used her role as a religious figure to promote peace and stability throughout Egypt. At times of unrest or famine, Sit-Hathor-Iunet was seen as a figure who could intercede with the gods on behalf of the people. Her prayers and rituals were believed to have the power to bring about divine intervention, whether in the form of rain, bountiful harvests, or the resolution of political conflicts. Her legacy in the realm of religion was one of devotion and service. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's deep understanding of Egypt's spiritual needs, combined with her ability to mediate between the divine and the mortal, made her an invaluable figure in the history of Egypt. Through her guidance, Egypt's spiritual practices were reinforced, ensuring that the gods' favor was maintained and that Egypt's place as the center of the ancient world remained secure. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's spiritual influence extended far beyond the royal court and the priests she collaborated with. Her role as a living embodiment of Hathor, the goddess of love, beauty, and fertility, lent a deep sense of legitimacy and sacred power to her actions and decisions. Her divine connection became a key component of her reign, not only within Egypt but also in how Egypt was perceived by surrounding nations. The queen's divine status made her an essential figure in reinforcing the idea that Egypt was a nation favored by the gods and under her guidance. Egypt's prosperity was linked to spiritual balance and harmony. In the bustling temples of Thebes, Karnak, and Heliopolis, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's name was frequently spoken in reverence. It was said that her presence in the temples during religious ceremonies was more than a symbolic gesture. Her very being was considered an offering to the gods. As queen, her participation in sacred rites demonstrated Egypt's adherence to the divine order, a crucial aspect of Egypt's political stability and religious authority. The most notable of these ceremonies was the festival dedicated to Hathor, which was a grand celebration held annually to honor the goddess. This event was one of the most significant in Egypt's religious calendar, drawing crowds from all over the kingdom. For Sit-Hathor-Iunet, this was not merely an event of ceremonial duty but a reaffirmation of her divine role. On this day, the queen took on the mantle of her goddess, performing rituals that brought divine blessings to Egypt, ensuring fertility of the land and the people. The public saw this as an essential moment in the cosmic order. By performing these rituals, Sit-Hathor-Iunet was believed to restore harmony and protect the nation from chaos. The queen's connection to Hathor was so powerful that it was said she could influence the weather and the crops of Egypt. When famine or drought threatened the kingdom, it was the queen who performed special prayers and rituals to invoke Hathor's blessings. And the Egyptian people believed that her divine favor ensured that the rains would fall and the Nile would flood, replenishing the lands. These miraculous interventions were often seen as proof of her powerful relationship with the divine. Through her, Egypt's prosperity was directly tied to the benevolence of the gods. However, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence in the spiritual realm was not confined to grand rituals and ceremonies. She worked tirelessly to ensure that religious institutions flourished throughout Egypt. She encouraged the construction of new temples and the restoration of old ones, making sure that the temples were places not only of worship but also of learning and culture. The priests and priestesses of Egypt were instrumental in maintaining the kingdom's stability, and Sit-Hathor-Iunet understood the importance of their role. She cultivated relationships with the high priests, ensuring that Egypt's religious leaders were aligned with the throne. These alliances were vital, as the religious authority of the priests often surpassed that of the military or political figures in Egypt's society. Moreover, the queen's influence extended to the patronage of arts and literature. Many of the great works of Egyptian art and architecture were made possible under her reign. Statues of the queen, often depicting her as Hathor or in the act of performing divine duties, were placed in temples throughout Egypt. These artworks became symbols of her enduring connection to the gods and were created to inspire both reverence and admiration from the people. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's role in the spiritual life of Egypt was so significant that it even shaped the religious landscape of neighboring nations. Egyptian religion was widely respected and, in many cases, imitated by surrounding kingdoms. The queens of Nubia and other neighboring powers were known to seek Sit-Hathor-Iunet's counsel on matters of religion and governance, seeing her as a spiritual leader in her own right. Her influence helped elevate Egypt's status as the cultural and religious hub of the ancient world, and it solidified her as one of the most powerful women of her time. As a mother, Sit-Hathor-Iunet also worked diligently to instill a sense of spiritual duty in her son, Amenemhat III. She understood that the future of Egypt depended not only on his ability to rule politically but also on his connection to the divine. The queen ensured that Amenemhat III participated in religious ceremonies from a young age, teaching him the rituals and prayers that were essential to maintaining Egypt's divine favor. She was determined to prepare him to be a pharaoh who would not only rule the land but who would also serve as the intermediary between the gods and the people. Her teachings emphasized that the pharaoh's power was not solely of human origin, it was bestowed upon him by the gods, and he was bound by divine laws to maintain harmony in the world. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's approach to religious leadership was not just about power, it was about balance. She believed that the spiritual health of Egypt depended on a harmonious relationship between the gods, the ruler, and the people. Through her actions, she demonstrated that true leadership was a reflection of divine favor and that the welfare of the nation depended on maintaining the gods' blessings. Her teachings were passed down to her son, who would later become one of Egypt's most celebrated pharaohs, known for his wise and compassionate rule. The spiritual foundation she laid for him would continue to guide his reign and ensure Egypt's prosperity long after her passing. As her time as queen drew to a close, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence continued to shape the spiritual landscape of Egypt. Her legacy was not only in the temples she had helped build or the rituals she had performed but in the way she had elevated the spiritual authority of the queen and integrated it with the throne. The connection between the pharaoh and the gods was a concept that Sit-Hathor-Iunet had reinforced during her reign, and it would remain a cornerstone of Egypt's political and spiritual identity for generations to come. In the years that followed, Egypt would continue to flourish under the reign of Amenemhat III. The stability that Sit-Hathor-Iunet had helped secure through her spiritual influence was evident in the kingdom's prosperity and peace. Egypt's position as a center of culture, religion, and power in the ancient world was reinforced, and it was clear that the queen's role in its success could never be understated. Sit-Hathor-Iunet had not only ensured the physical and political prosperity of Egypt, but she had also laid the spiritual foundation for future generations of rulers to come. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's role in Egypt's court was not merely as a queen consort or religious figure. She was an integral player in the power struggles, rivalries, and intricate dynamics of the royal family and court. The palace, like the land it governed, was a place of political tension, where every faction within the royal family and among the elite nobles sought to consolidate their power. It was in this complex and often treacherous world that Sit-Hathor-Iunet's astuteness, her ability to mediate, and her diplomatic skills would be tested to their limits. From the moment of her marriage to Amenemhat II, Sit-Hathor-Iunet had entered a world where influence was not simply gained by royal blood but by the ability to navigate and manipulate the power structures within the court. Egypt's royal court, like many others, was fraught with intrigues. The nobles and priests, who held considerable sway over the direction of Egypt's policies and governance, were often divided along personal and factional lines. Rivalries between noble families were commonplace, and each sought to secure their own future through alliances, marriages, and, at times, manipulation. The queen's ability to maintain peace and stability within this environment was one of her most significant achievements. Her influence in the court was not based on brute force but on her sharp intellect and her exceptional understanding of human nature. She understood that the key to maintaining her power lay not only in her connection to the gods but also in managing relationships, both within the palace and with the broader political elites. Her role as the wife of Amenemhat II was a political asset in itself. The queen had the ability to mediate between competing factions, using her influence to ensure that no single faction could overpower the others. Her diplomatic skills were invaluable in maintaining the balance of power at the court. When rival factions clashed, it was Sit-Hathor-Iunet who stepped in to calm tensions, offering compromises and managing the egos of those who sought to challenge each other. She was the unseen hand that guided the court through times of political turmoil, ensuring that the unity of the royal family remained intact. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's relationship with her husband, Amenemhat II, was also a key element in her ability to navigate court politics. While Amenemhat II was often preoccupied with military campaigns or matters of state, it was Sit-Hathor-Iunet who understood the importance of securing the loyalty of the royal court. She was not just his queen by title but his most trusted advisor, providing counsel on matters of court politics, family alliances, and even foreign diplomacy. Her ability to read the mood of the court and identify potential threats was essential in keeping the balance of power in her favor. At the heart of Sit-Hathor-Iunet's political maneuvering was her relationship with the high priests. The priests held immense influence in ancient Egypt, controlling vast amounts of wealth and resources and guiding the spiritual life of the people. Their influence over the masses was profound, and gaining their favor was crucial for any ruler who sought to maintain their power. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's divine connection to Hathor made her a key ally of the priesthood. Her role as the living embodiment of the goddess allowed her to maintain strong ties with the most powerful religious leaders in Egypt. She carefully cultivated relationships with the high priests, using her position to ensure that the spiritual leaders remained loyal to the throne. When political crises arose, the queen was often the one to call upon the priests for their support. She knew that in a land where the divine and the political were so intertwined, securing the approval of the priests was vital to maintaining the legitimacy of Amenemhat II's reign. The priests, in turn, respected her wisdom and her connection to Hathor, and they often supported her when her influence at court was challenged by rival factions. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence, however, was not without its challenges. As her power grew, so too did the envy and distrust of those who sought to undermine her. Rivals within the royal court, Eager to gain favor with Amenemhat II or to position themselves more favorably for future influence, often plotted against her. Some saw her power as a threat to their own ambitions and sought ways to diminish her influence. But the queen, with her diplomatic savvy and understanding of court politics, was always several steps ahead of her adversaries. One of the most significant threats to Sit-Hathor-Iunet's position came from within the royal family. While Amenemhat II trusted his wife completely, there were factions within the court, particularly among the nobility, that resented her influence. Some of the more ambitious courtiers, particularly those from rival noble families, sought to undermine her position by sowing discord between the queen and the king. They whispered lies, created rumors, and attempted to drive a wedge between the royal couple, hoping to weaken her power. But Sit-Hathor-Iunet, ever the strategist, was prepared for such challenges. She knew that her position was only as strong as her ability to maintain the trust of Amenemhat II, and she worked tirelessly to ensure that their relationship remained strong and unshakable. She often turned the intrigues of her enemies to her advantage, using their plots as opportunities to solidify her alliances and neutralize potential threats. Her ability to balance the demands of family, politics, and religion was perhaps her greatest strength. As the mother of Amenemhat III, Sit-Hathor-Iunet was also concerned with ensuring the future of Egypt's royal bloodline. The royal family, with its various factions, often sought to challenge the succession. Rival families, particularly those with strong military or political connections, tried to position themselves as more deserving of the throne. But Sit-Hathor-Iunet was determined to protect her son's future, and she used her position to secure Amenemhat III's place as the rightful heir. Through careful manipulation of court alliances, the queen ensured that her son's position was never in jeopardy. She arranged marriages with influential noble families, ensuring that Amenemhat III's future reign would be supported by powerful allies. Sit-Hathor-Iunet was also instrumental in preventing potential challengers to her son's throne, neutralizing threats before they could fully materialize. Despite the intrigues that surrounded her, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence remained unchallenged. She was a master of court politics, able to navigate the complex web of rivalries, alliances, and power struggles that defined the royal palace. Her role as a mother, advisor, and protector of Egypt's future ensured that the 12th dynasty would remain stable and secure, paving the way for her son's eventual reign. Her political genius was not just about securing her own position but about securing the future of Egypt itself. She had ensured that Amenemhat III, when he ascended the throne, would have the support he needed to continue the legacy of the great kings who came before him. Her work behind the scenes, though largely invisible to the public eye, was one of the key factors that allowed Egypt to thrive during her husband's reign and beyond. As the reign of Amenemhat II flourished and his military campaigns expanded Egypt's borders, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence began to stretch beyond the royal palace and the political chambers of power. The queen's legacy was not merely confined to her role as a consort and advisor. It was shaped by the lasting impact she had on Egypt's cultural, economic, and religious institutions. Her contributions were profound, ensuring that Egypt's future was built upon a foundation of strength, wisdom, and stability. Though Sit-Hathor-Iunet had been instrumental in securing her husband's reign and guiding her son to the throne, her role as queen did not end with the political affairs of the palace. Her contributions to the cultural and spiritual landscape of Egypt would endure long after her reign had passed. The queen's commitment to preserving Egypt's ancient traditions while fostering new growth made her a true patron of Egypt's cultural and intellectual heritage. One of the most notable aspects of Sit-Hathor-Iunet's legacy was her dedication to the construction and restoration of temples throughout Egypt. These temples, which were centers of both religious and cultural life, became lasting symbols of her influence. As a patroness of the arts and architecture, Sit-Hathor-Iunet commissioned monumental building projects that would remain significant throughout Egypt's history. She understood the importance of these structures, not only as places of worship but as symbols of Egypt's enduring power and divine favor. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's patronage extended beyond the temples. She also supported the scribes and scholars who helped preserve Egypt's vast store of knowledge. The queen understood that Egypt's power lay not only in its military might but also in its cultural and intellectual achievements. The scribes who recorded Egypt's history, laws, and religious texts were the keepers of the kingdom's identity, and Sit-Hathor-Iunet ensured that they were well supported. Under her guidance, Egypt's rich cultural traditions, its art, literature, and philosophy were preserved for future generations. Her support for the arts was not only practical but also deeply symbolic. Sit-Hathor-Iunet was often depicted in statues and reliefs as both a divine and a royal figure, embodying the goddess Hathor in human form. These statues, often placed in temples or key sites, served as reminders of her connection to the divine and her role as the protector of Egypt's cultural heritage. Each statue, carved with great care and attention to detail, was a work of art that reflected the queen's power and influence. Her image became a symbol of the unity between Egypt's gods and its rulers, further solidifying her place in the kingdom's legacy. In addition to her artistic contributions, Sit-Hathor-Iunet also sought to ensure the continuity of Egypt's religious traditions. She was deeply involved in the ritual life of Egypt, participating in ceremonies that helped reinforce the kingdom's connection to the divine. Her role in these ceremonies was seen as essential to the prosperity of the nation. The queen's participation in rituals associated with Hathor, celebrating fertility, love, and harmony, became central to Egypt's spiritual life. Through her, the divine and the earthly realms were connected, ensuring that Egypt would continue to thrive under the favor of the gods. Her legacy was also embedded in the educational system of Egypt. Sit-Hathor-Iunet believed in the power of knowledge and education, particularly for the future leaders of Egypt. She supported the development of schools and institutions of higher learning, where young Egyptians could be trained in the arts of governance, religion, and military strategy. She recognized that the strength of Egypt's future depended not only on the military might of its rulers, but also on the intellectual and cultural contributions of its people. Through her patronage, she helped establish a system that would cultivate future generations of leaders, scholars, and priests who would continue to uphold Egypt's greatness. As a mother, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's most enduring legacy was in the education and upbringing of her son, Amenemhat III. She was not only a political advisor to her husband, but also a guiding force in the development of Egypt's future pharaoh. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's teachings were fundamental in shaping Amenemhat III's understanding of leadership, diplomacy, and religious duty. Through her careful guidance, Amenemhat III grew into a wise and compassionate ruler who would carry on his mother's legacy of wisdom and justice. When he ascended to the throne, Amenemhat III continued to honor his mother's principles, and his reign was marked by prosperity, peace, and cultural flourishing. Though Sit-Hathor-Iunet's direct influence over Egypt's affairs would diminish as her son took the throne, her legacy continued to resonate throughout the kingdom. The queen's teachings, her diplomatic skills, and her commitment to the welfare of the people were carried on by Amenemhat III, ensuring that Egypt would remain a powerful force in the ancient world for generations. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's legacy was not just that of a queen who had helped her husband rule, it was the legacy of a mother who had raised a ruler capable of preserving Egypt's glory. The queen's influence also extended to the people of Egypt. While the royal court may have seen her as a powerful figure, the common people of Egypt viewed Sit-Hathor-Iunet with a deep sense of reverence. She was not only a queen but also a figure of divine protection. The festivals she led, the prayers she offered, and the peace she brokered all contributed to the sense of security and prosperity that the people of Egypt enjoyed. Sit-Hathor-Iunet became an enduring symbol of Egypt's strength, both politically and spiritually. Her contributions to Egypt were felt long after her death. She had helped shape the 12th dynasty into one of Egypt's most prosperous periods. Under Amenemhat III, Egypt would continue to thrive, bolstered by the foundations that Sit-Hathor-Iunet had laid during her reign. Her legacy was not just in the monuments she commissioned or the alliances she forged, but in the lasting impact she had on Egypt's spiritual, cultural, and political landscape. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence did not fade with her passing. The temples she helped build stood as enduring reminders of her divine connection, and her image continued to be revered in statues and reliefs throughout Egypt. Her teachings, her wisdom, and her love for her country lived on in the reign of her son and in the generations of Egyptians who would follow. She had ensured that Egypt's future would be secure, and her name would be remembered for centuries as one of the most influential and revered queens in the history of the ancient world. As the years passed and Amenemhat II's reign neared its later stages, Sit-Hathor-Iunet, the queen who had shaped the political, spiritual, and cultural landscape of Egypt, found herself at a crossroads. Having ensured the stability and prosperity of the kingdom, her role as the central figure in both the palace and the nation was slowly evolving. Her influence over the affairs of state, though still significant, was beginning to wane as Egypt looked forward to the future. Yet, despite the increasing prominence of her son, Amenemhat III, and his eventual ascent to the throne, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's presence continued to be a guiding force. Her influence was no longer exercised with the same level of direct control over the state affairs. However, it was in these final years that her true legacy as a mother, a protector of Egypt's future, and a stabilizing force within the royal family would become most apparent. As Amenemhat II's health began to decline, Sit-Hathor-Iunet assumed a quieter but no less critical role. She transitioned from a co-ruler, advising her husband and guiding Egypt's diplomacy, to a protector of her son's path to the throne. She began to step back from the political limelight, knowing that Egypt's future leadership would soon be in the hands of Amenemhat III. The queen's role, though less public, was no less essential. In this period of transition, her wisdom and counsel remained invaluable to her husband and son. She continued to offer her guidance to Amenemhat II, especially during moments of uncertainty where her decades of political experience and sharp strategic mind ensured the kingdom's continuity. She also worked behind the scenes, overseeing the royal family's inner workings, ensuring that her son's succession was secure and that Egypt's internal politics remained stable. In the final years of Amenemhat II's reign, the royal court experienced tensions. As is often the case in royal households, rivalries within the family and among the elite began to surface. Some of the more ambitious members of the royal court, seeing Amenemhat II's health decline, sought to secure their own power by positioning themselves in favor of Amenemhat III. Others, driven by personal ambition or jealousy, attempted to undermine the young prince's ascent to the throne. Sit-Hathor-Iunet, ever the strategist, worked quietly behind the scenes to ensure these political maneuvers did not destabilize the royal succession. She knew that the unity of the royal family was essential, and she worked tirelessly to smooth over any rifts that threatened to divide her son's supporters. While she refrained from openly confronting her rivals, her influence was felt in the way the family operated, through her diplomacy and keen understanding of court politics. Sit-Hathor-Iunet was able to secure the support of the nobles and military leaders who would ensure Amenemhat III's safe passage to the throne. As her husband's health grew weaker, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's role within the court began to evolve. She no longer needed to be the visible political leader. Her work now focused on preparing Amenemhat III to take over the mantle of leadership. In this final chapter of her reign, she assumed the role of a wise elder, passing on her knowledge and experience to the young prince. She guided him on matters of governance, diplomacy, and even military strategy, ensuring that he was ready to rule Egypt with the same wisdom and integrity that she had displayed throughout her life. One of the defining aspects of Sit-Hathor-Iunet's final years was her relationship with Amenemhat III. Though her son was still young and learning the ropes of governance, she took great care in ensuring that he was prepared for the responsibilities of the throne. She imparted to him the importance of balancing power with compassion, wisdom with strength, and the divine with the earthly. Her teachings were designed not only to make him a capable ruler but also a just one, someone who would rule Egypt with fairness and integrity. In these later years, Sit-Hathor-Iunet became a symbol of continuity and stability within the royal family. As the political winds shifted and Egypt's foreign relations evolved, she remained the quiet, steady hand that ensured Egypt's place as a dominant power in the ancient world. Her name, tied to Hathor, became synonymous with Egypt's well-being, and her presence was a reminder that the nation's future was secure under her son's reign. However, as all things must, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's time in the royal court eventually came to an end. Though her influence would remain embedded in the policies of Amenemhat III and in the strength of Egypt, her health began to deteriorate. Even in her final moments, she remained the spiritual and emotional anchor of the royal family. Amenemhat III, now fully prepared to take the throne, would not have had the confidence to rule without his mother's steady guidance. Her death, when it came, was a quiet affair marked by sorrow but also by pride in the legacy she had built. Sit-Hathor-Iunet passed away peacefully, leaving behind a nation that had been strengthened by her wisdom, her leadership, and her unwavering commitment to Egypt's prosperity. Her death was felt deeply not only by her family but by the people of Egypt. The queen, who had been a figure of divine power and maternal guidance, was mourned by all who had benefited from her influence. Her passing marked the end of an era, but her legacy continued to live on through her son and the policies she had put in place. In the years following her death, Amenemhat III would ascend to the throne, ruling with the wisdom and foresight that Sit-Hathor-Iunet had instilled in him. Egypt would continue to prosper, with the queen's legacy woven into the very fabric of the nation. Her contributions to Egypt's military strength, its spiritual health, and its cultural legacy would never be forgotten. Even after her passing, Sit-Hathor-Iunet remained a symbol of the power and grace that defined Egypt's queens. Her name would be immortalized in the monuments she helped build, in the temples she supported, and in the hearts of the Egyptian people. Sit-Hathor-Iunet was not just a queen. She was a mother, a spiritual leader, and a protector of Egypt's future. Her legacy, forged in her wisdom and her love for her country, would continue to shape the destiny of Egypt for generations to come. The reign of Amenemhat II was a prosperous time for Egypt. The nation, under his leadership and the quiet, steadfast guidance of his queen Sit-Hathor-Iunet, had witnessed unparalleled stability. However, as time passes, even the most formidable forces are subject to the inevitable toll of age and mortality. It was in the final years of Amenemhat II's reign that Sit-Hathor-Iunet, the queen who had guided Egypt through tumultuous political landscapes, stood as the silent strength behind her husband and son, began to feel the weight of time. Her health, which had once been as resilient as her political acumen, began to falter. Despite the political and military triumphs that marked Amenemhat II's rule, the greatest challenge in the queen's life was the inevitability of her own mortality. Sit-Hathor-Iunet, like so many powerful figures in history, had spent her life ensuring the future prosperity of her country, her family, and her dynasty. Her wisdom, her influence, and her divine status as the living embodiment of Hathor had shaped Egypt for decades, and she knew that her legacy, though monumental, could not shield her from the passage of time. For the first time in her life, Sit-Hathor-Iunet was forced to acknowledge that the kingdom she had so carefully nurtured would continue without her. But her death, though expected, was not something easily faced by those who had come to rely on her strength. Amenemhat II, a ruler accustomed to overcoming great military and political challenges, found himself unprepared for the emotional weight of losing his partner, his confidant, and the woman who had been by his side through every trial. Their bond, forged in both love and duty, had withstood the pressures of their reign. Now the king was left with a profound emptiness that no victory, no alliance could fill. Amenemhat II's final years were marked by sorrow. His queen, once his guiding force, was no longer able to stand beside him in the court or in the temples. She had been the central figure in Egypt's spiritual life, and without her, the rituals and ceremonies that had sustained the kingdom for decades felt incomplete. Yet, even as her health deteriorated, Sit-Hathor-Iunet continued to offer her wisdom, guiding Amenemhat II with a quiet resolve. It was as if, in her final days, she was ensuring that the kingdom would not falter in her absence, that the foundations she had helped build would endure. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's passing was a moment of great reverence throughout Egypt. The royal court, which had seen her rise to power and wield influence over the affairs of state, mourned her loss deeply. The nobles, who had relied on her ability to mediate between rival factions, found themselves faced with a sudden vacuum of power. But it was not just the elite who mourned. The people of Egypt, who had long viewed her as a figure of divine grace and protection, also felt the weight of her passing. To them, Sit-Hathor-Iunet had been more than just a queen. She had been the embodiment of Egypt's strength, the unspoken protector of their spiritual and political well-being. The day of her death was marked by a profound sense of loss that rippled throughout Egypt's capital, Thebes, and beyond. The queen's passing was not simply the loss of a royal figure. It was the end of an era. For many, Sit-Hathor-Iunet had been a living connection to the gods. As a daughter of Hathor, Her very existence had symbolized the divine protection over Egypt. With her death, the question arose, could Egypt continue to thrive without her spiritual and political influence? In the days that followed, the Egyptian people began to look to the future. Amenemhat II, though devastated by the loss of his wife, knew that the kingdom could not stop for mourning. His son, Amenemhat III, was now of age and ready to take the throne. While Amenemhat II had been a strong ruler in his own right, it was Sit-Hathor-Iunet who had laid the groundwork for his son's future reign. The stability she had helped build, the alliances she had forged, and the wisdom she had imparted to Amenemhat III made her death a turning point for the royal family. As the mourning period stretched on, Amenemhat II found himself relying more heavily on his son to take on the responsibilities of leadership. It was a role that Amenemhat III had been preparing for his entire life, and now, in the wake of his mother's death, he was ready to step forward. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's teachings had not just been about governance and diplomacy, they had been about character, compassion, and the ability to lead with wisdom and justice. Amenemhat III would need to be both a military leader and a spiritual figure. Much like his mother had been, someone who understood that leadership was about more than power, it was about responsibility to the people and the gods. As the ceremonial preparations for her funeral began, Egypt's most revered priests and priestesses came together to honor Sit-Hathor-Iunet's divine connection. Her body was prepared according to the sacred rituals, and the temples dedicated to Hathor were filled with mourners offering prayers and sacrifices. The funeral itself was a monumental event, a reflection of the queen's extraordinary influence over the kingdom's spiritual and cultural life. It was a day of reflection, of understanding that the queen had been both a spiritual and political leader, a bridge between the mortal world and the divine. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's tomb was built near the great temples she had helped restore and commission, a final resting place befitting the queen who had shaped the kingdom. As the funeral procession made its way to the tomb, the people of Egypt lined the streets, offering flowers, incense, and prayers for their beloved queen. The air was heavy with both sadness and reverence as the Egyptians understood that this was the passing of a figure whose legacy would live on long after her physical death. Amenemhat II, though deeply mournful, knew that the kingdom could not stand still. He watched as his son took the first steps toward assuming the throne. He knew that his reign, and that of his wife, had laid the foundations for Egypt's continued prosperity. But he also knew that the future now rested in Amenemhat III's hands. As the mourning period came to an end, the king and his son turned their attention toward securing Egypt's future, ensuring that the transition of power would be smooth and that the nation would continue to flourish. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's death marked a turning point not only for the royal family but for Egypt itself. The queen had been the linchpin that held together the political, spiritual, and cultural elements of the kingdom. Her passing left a void, but it also made way for a new era. Amenemhat III, with his mother's teachings and legacy as his foundation, would rule Egypt with the wisdom, strength, and compassion that she had instilled in him. The death of Sit-Hathor-Iunet marked the end of an era for Egypt, but her legacy, deeply intertwined with the reign of Amenemhat II, continued to reverberate through the kingdom. The queen, who had been the silent yet powerful force behind Egypt's prosperity, had helped shape the political, military, and spiritual landscapes of her time. Her influence, though not always seen directly, had been the glue that held Egypt's vast empire together. With her passing, the throne would now pass to her son, Amenemhat III. But the foundations that Sit-Hathor-Iunet had laid would ensure that Egypt's reign remained strong and stable for generations to come. Amenemhat II, once a ruler who had shared power with his queen, now found himself alone in the political arena. His wife's death left an unfillable void in both his personal and political life. For years, Sit-Hathor-Iunet had been his most trusted advisor, a wise and balanced influence on his decisions. Though Amenemhat II was a strong and capable ruler, it was her quiet guidance that had ensured the success of his military campaigns, his diplomatic negotiations, and his control over the royal court. Without her, he now faced a different kind of rule, one in which he would have to rely on others to fill the space left by his wife. In the aftermath of Sit-Hathor-Iunet's death, Amenemhat II turned increasingly toward his son, Amenemhat III, to take on more of the responsibilities of leadership. Although Amenemhat III had been prepared for this moment by his mother's teachings, the transition of power was not without its challenges. Egypt under Amenemhat II had enjoyed relative peace and prosperity. The kingdom had seen the successful consolidation of power and expansion of Egypt's influence, but now, as Amenemhat III assumed the throne, there were new threats on the horizon. The political alliances and military victories that Sit-Hathor-Iunet had helped secure were now being tested by rising powers in the region, including the growing influence of the Hittites and the unstable kingdoms in the Levant. Amenemhat III's ascension to the throne would bring with it new challenges, and Amenemhat II understood that his son would need not only the wisdom his mother had passed on to him, but also his own unique style of leadership. The king now looked at his son with a sense of both hope and apprehension, recognizing that the future of Egypt would depend on his ability to maintain the stability his wife had helped him create. The weight of this responsibility was heavy, but Amenemhat II knew that his son was capable of handling the demands of the throne. Though Amenemhat II was increasingly focused on preparing his son for leadership, the king's actions in his later years were still deeply influenced by the policies and decisions that Sit-Hathor-Iunet had set in motion. The queen's legacy lived on not just in her teachings but in the very structure of the government she had helped solidify. Egypt's military was still powerful, its economy robust, and its religious institutions intact, all aspects that Sit-Hathor-Iunet had been directly involved in overseeing. In particular, Amenemhat II continued the military campaigns that had been a hallmark of his reign, but the queen's influence was still felt in the way these campaigns were conducted. While Amenemhat II had led with strength and ambition, it was Sit-Hathor-Iunet who had reminded him of the importance of diplomacy. As Amenemhat II grew older, he found himself relying more on negotiation and strategic alliances, learning from the lessons his queen had instilled in him. Amenemhat III, having watched this process closely, was prepared to take these lessons and expand upon them during his own reign. The king's diplomatic efforts had helped to keep Egypt at the center of the political sphere in the Near East. Through the queen's guidance, Egypt had built relationships with powerful allies, including the Phoenicians, Nubians, and various Levantine city-states. Amenemhat II's foreign policy had been one of cautious expansion, focused on securing Egypt's borders while avoiding unnecessary conflict. This approach, shaped by Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence, allowed Egypt to remain the dominant power in the region while keeping the military from overextending itself. It was this careful diplomacy that Amenemhat III would inherit, ensuring that Egypt would not only survive but thrive in the changing political landscape. Internally, the queen's influence was equally profound. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's policies of promoting education, cultural development, and religious continuity had laid the groundwork for a prosperous Egypt. Amenemhat III, as he assumed the throne, was not just inheriting power but inheriting a nation that had been carefully cultivated by his mother's guidance. The queen's commitment to education and intellectual development had ensured that Egypt's future leaders, artists, and scholars were well prepared to carry forward the kingdom's legacy. Amenemhat III understood that to be a successful ruler, he would need to continue these initiatives, fostering a culture of knowledge and artistic achievement that had made Egypt a beacon of civilization in the ancient world. One of the lasting aspects of Sit-Hathor-Iunet's legacy was the way in which she had maintained the delicate balance between political and spiritual authority. As the queen consort, she had never been content to merely play a secondary role in the kingdom's spiritual life. She had been deeply involved in Egypt's religious practices, from overseeing temple construction to participating in the great religious festivals. Amenemhat III understood that Egypt's strength did not only lie in its military might or economic resources. It also lay in the continued favor of the gods. His mother's deep connection to the divine had ensured that Egypt remained in the gods' favor throughout Amenemhat II's reign. And now, as he ascended to the throne, Amenemhat III would carry this spiritual responsibility with him. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's passing had left a vacuum in Egypt's spiritual life, but the queen's legacy in this regard remained strong. The temples she had helped to build and restore continued to be places of worship and learning. The festivals that Sit-Hathor-Iunet had presided over remained significant events in the lives of the Egyptian people, reinforcing their connection to the divine and to the throne. Amenemhat III, guided by his mother's example, would ensure that the religious traditions she had so carefully maintained would continue to be central to Egypt's identity. In the years following her death, the queen's influence remained deeply embedded in the policies of Amenemhat III. While the young king may have sought to carve out his own legacy, he never strayed far from the lessons his mother had taught him. Amenemhat III ruled with the wisdom and compassion that Sit-Hathor-Iunet had instilled in him, and Egypt flourished under his reign. The balance between military might, diplomacy, and spiritual favor that Sit-Hathor-Iunet had perfected during her lifetime became the foundation upon which Amenemhat III built his own rule. The reign of Sit-Hathor-Iunet, though it came to an end with her passing, left an indelible mark on Egypt. The queen, through her wisdom, grace, and devotion to both her family and her country, ensured that Egypt would continue to thrive long after she had left the mortal world. In the years that followed her death, the influence of her legacy was felt in every aspect of Egyptian life, politically, spiritually, and culturally. Amenemhat III, having ascended to the throne, ruled with the same principles his mother had instilled in him. The political stability and prosperity of Egypt were a testament to her foresight and teachings. His reign was marked by peace and continued prosperity, and Egypt remained a dominant power in the ancient world. But Amenemhat III's success was not just due to his own talents. It was the result of the foundation Sit-Hathor-Iunet had laid, not only for him but for all of Egypt. While Amenemhat III would have his own legacy, his reign would forever be intertwined with that of his mother. Her guidance had shaped him into a wise and just ruler, someone who would go on to preserve Egypt's power and further its cultural and intellectual achievements. Sit-Hathor-Iunet's legacy was embedded in every decision Amenemhat III made, in every festival, in every diplomatic negotiation, and in every military campaign. The queen had ensured that the dynasty would continue to flourish, and Amenemhat III's rule was the manifestation of her vision for Egypt's future. Beyond her direct influence on her son, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's legacy was carried on through the many institutions she had nurtured during her lifetime. The temples she had helped to build and restore continued to serve as centers of worship and culture. The scribes, scholars, and priests who had benefited from her patronage carried on the intellectual and artistic achievements that Egypt was known for. The queen's impact on the arts, particularly in sculpture and reliefs, left a lasting visual legacy. Her image, often depicted as both a queen and a divine figure, adorned temples and monuments throughout Egypt, ensuring that her presence would continue to be felt long after her death. But perhaps the most profound aspect of Sit-Hathor-Iunet's legacy was her role as a mother. She had not only given birth to a future ruler but had also shaped him into the leader Egypt needed. Her teachings on governance, diplomacy, and the divine right of kings resonated deeply with Amenemhat III, who ruled with compassion and wisdom. Her lessons were not just political but deeply human. She taught her son to rule with empathy, to listen to the needs of the people, and to ensure that Egypt's prosperity was shared by all its citizens. Even after her death, Sit-Hathor-Iunet's name became synonymous with stability, strength, and divine favor. The Egyptian people, who had revered her during her life, continued to honor her memory after her passing. Statues of the queen were placed in temples, and her name was invoked in religious ceremonies. To the people, she was not just a queen consort. She was a protector, a spiritual figure, and a symbol of Egypt's eternal strength. Her place in history, too, was cemented. Sit-Hathor-Iunet was remembered as one of Egypt's greatest queens, not simply for her political acumen, her diplomatic skills, or her role as a mother, but for the way she embodied the divine power of the gods. Her connection to Hathor was more than symbolic. It was the foundation of her rule. She had, in her own way, become the goddess Hathor on earth, and her reign was seen as a golden age in which Egypt flourished under divine protection. In the centuries that followed, historians, priests, and scholars would look back on her reign as a model of leadership. Egypt, under Sit-Hathor-Iunet's influence, had reached its zenith, peaceful, prosperous, and deeply connected to the divine. Her legacy was one that inspired future rulers not just in Egypt but in the neighboring kingdoms that looked to Egypt as a beacon of power, wisdom, and stability. Amenemhat III, who would go on to rule for many years, would always carry his mother's influence with him. His reign, though uniquely his own, was marked by the same principles that Sit-Hathor-Iunet had instilled in him. Under his rule, Egypt continued to thrive. Its cultural and intellectual life remained vibrant, and its military might was unrivaled. But the true legacy of Sit-Hathor-Iunet lay in the fact that Egypt had not only survived but had prospered under the leadership of a ruler who had been shaped by her guidance. Though Sit-Hathor-Iunet's time on the throne had passed, her legacy lived on in every aspect of Egyptian life, through the monuments she had commissioned, the temples she had supported, and the teachings she had passed on to her son. Her name was etched into the very fabric of Egypt's identity, and it was in the reign of Amenemhat III that the true extent of her influence could be seen. The queen who had once stood beside Amenemhat II, guiding him through turbulent times and ensuring Egypt's prosperity, was now a legend, her life a testament to the power of wisdom, love, and divine protection. Sit-Hathor-Iunet had been more than a queen. She had been a force of nature, a mother, a spiritual leader, and a protector of Egypt. Her legacy would never be forgotten, and her name would echo through the halls of history, a symbol of Egypt's eternal strength,